How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Real Talk number 7. Today's topic is the importance of cover art. Now, I think that cover art is the most important aspect of an indie project. Now, of course, the interior, whether it's the prose, the art, the story, is obviously very important, and your pitch is, in my opinion, probably the second most important um, factor of an indie project. The reason why I think the cover art is most important is it's what opens the door. It's also what opens people's wallets. A lot of times, if cover art doesn't seem really palatable, people won't even get to the pitch, right? They won't even go into the Amazon description or the Indiegogo project. So to me, it's extremely important to have some really eye-popping and catching cover art. Now, this is something I've learned from experience. A few years ago, I did, initial release of Blood and Stone, and I wasn't very patient when it came to the cover art. And I didn't think through the layout enough. I didn't do enough research to find the proper artist. I, like many people, just want to get my story out there, right? Spent 5, 6 years writing these stories. You just really want to get them in front of people. And so I can really relate to that sentiment, but I do think that that's where a lot of folks go wrong, whether it's indie comics or indie novels. Um, there are plenty of folks that do some, they have killer cover art, and I do think in a lot of cases the sales end up lining up with that, right? They end up getting a lot better, having a lot better success on their, crowdfunders or through Amazon. And on the flip side, you see a lot of folks where the cover art might be lacking and they're really struggling. And in some cases, they end up kind of giving up on the dream per se because the first book didn't go as well as they thought. And so I think it's extremely important that folks do their due diligence on their cover art. Now, there's several aspects to this or factors. The first is, of course, making sure that you have the right kind of cover art that matches your story, your characters. And you can do that in several ways, right? To me, one of the most important factor there is introducing your characters. Obviously, at least one, if not two or more, if you can. If you can't get a sense of what your characters are about or the importance of the characters, the rawness of their appearance, then again, it's going to be, I think that door is kind of going to get closed when it comes to potential customers. You really need something that pulls in people. And, like I said, when I first had that, initial cover art, it connected with some folks, but it also gave the wrong impression. I think a lot of people thought that it was more of a horror book, and the style of the art was almost too retro. Kind of felt like kind of 80s horror. And my novel is not a horror story. At best, it's got some Lovecraftian horror, but it's more of a mental manipulation and more on the psychology side of things. There's not like torture, intense gore or anything like that. And so I think that shied away customers, and it just didn't pull people in enough. So after a few years, I'm like, okay, I'm going to approach this differently. And what I did was I got more into the comic kind of community, the indie scene for comics, and got exposed to a few artists. And then as I saw their posts, I came across more artists, and it was like a domino effect of just, getting connected with all these awesome artists, or at least seeing who was out there. And so, because of that, I was able to come across Kozar, which you'll actually, see behind me here a bit. um, and the art just spoke to me, just how clean the art was, how gritty the characters were, and the colors, like the tones, everything. Just I was like, man, that's how I visualized my characters in my mind. And because of that, I reached out to to Clayton Barton, and he connected me with his brother, and I found out that he can do lines and color work and inking, the whole shebang. And working with him, he was able to take my layouts, because this time I put a lot more thought and effort into how I wanted the front cover and the back cover to look. I wanted to do a wraparound, which I think is very important also for indie artists. I'll get there in a second, but I wanted to really encapsulate the main characters. I wanted people to see these characters and just be like, wow, I want to learn about these characters. I want to learn about this story. And so, I made the first cover art for A Blood of Stone to really introduce the two main characters, so that you could really see like, oh, this is this jacked gargoyle. He's got some blood running down his claws, so obviously it's a bit more of a gritty story. And then in the background, in the front cover, you have Incubus, who's this kind of freaky looking Lovecraftian style character and clearly a villain. And then also in the backdrop had the Michigan Central Station, which is a very key location in my story and just a very iconic building. And then on the back cover, again, a close-up of Incubus, just kind of a freaky, eerie shot of him, again, to give that Lovecraftian, vibe to the story. And, there's several ways you can approach your cover art, right? Some people like very dynamic, action-filled covers. Others like static, covers where you're just introducing the characters. And, what I did was in book one, as you can see, I did more of a static approach, just introduce the characters, get people interested in the characters. And then book two, I did kind of a combination. I introduced the entire team of vigilantes as well as more of the villains, but I had a dynamic shot in the middle of the front cover of the gargoyle jumping out of a window with glass flying out, kind of flying over and beyond the other characters as a homage to Zack Snyder's Watchmen, poster art. And then in the mini comic, I also did a combination. The Corey Barton cover has more of a dynamic shot of the gargoyle, coming down from the sky, getting ready to attack the super soldiers, with the super soldiers shooting at him and reacting with some rain falling down. And then I'd had Skunk Artworks, which is, again, more of a static, just introducing the two characters kind of facing off. And then lastly, the Joe Ball cover, which was a combination of, some static shots of some of the vigilantes and then an action shot of the gargoyle, reaching up, trying to grab another character, Dr. Foster. And then getting back to the wraparound aspect, I think an issue or a mistake that a lot of novelists do is they do not take advantage of all the real estate on a book, meaning they'll do a front cover. Maybe it introduces a character or two, maybe it has a little bit of action, but they're not utilizing that back cover in a lot of cases. They're just having kind of a background and then they're putting their pitch on the back page. Now, I'm not necessarily against that, but to me, I would utilize that area to introduce more characters, give more insight into the story to really, again, pull people in. You can always put the pitch and the inside of the front cover or the first page. If you really get people interested in the cover art, they're going to open the book up. Unlike a comic where they can open up and see the interior art, right? You just have prose primarily in the inside. So that's why that cover art, you got to take advantage of that entire real estate. And so, and especially on the indie novel scene, you see a lot of books where it's just like some font or kind of a shadow of a character. And again, I think a lot of times people are so focused on the cost of cover art. I think there's a big misconception of the cost of cover art. A lot of novelists I've came across, they think you have to spend $2,000-$3,000 on cover art because some of the big cover artists for novels charge that much. Some cases the art's great. In some cases it's kind of mid. but they're not looking outside of novels or novel cover artists. And I'm very glad I actually looked outside of that arena, got connected with comic book artists, because comic book artists have experience not only creating characters but creating layouts, panels, and they just have that creative mindset, and they can do different styles. It doesn't have to look, more cartoonish or comic book like. There's many artists that can do several different styles. And even though mine has a little bit more of a comic book kind of style, like a 90s Keown, Liefeld style look, it really does the job of catching people's attention, especially in person. And so, you know, you do not have to spend $1,000 on a wraparound cover at all. You can do it literally at a fraction. And unfortunately, a lot of folks are just they're they're so impatient. They want to get their cover, or they want to get their book out there, that they're using stock images and now AI, or artists that I've seen artists that do cover art. However, you can tell there are aspects in there that are stock images, or they're like heavily like kind of photoshopped images. It doesn't look hand drawn, or colored. So I do think there are a lot of novelists that are getting tricked a bit, which is very unfortunate. Um, I hope people are getting to see every stage of the cover art. That's what I loved about all of my covers. They showed me every stage, so I could see the initial layout and the progression throughout with the pencils, the inking, the colors, so you knew, right, they're not using 3D assets, they're not using AI, etc. So I really want to help indie novelists realize, like, hey, there are comic book artists and just illustrators out there that can do fantastic work for two, three, four, $500, give you a full cover or wraparound piece of cover art. And you know, so many people have kind of just accepted the fact that a lot of people won't make money on a book, right? Or their first book, they won't recover the cost, so they're like, why invest? And I think that's the wrong way to approach it. I think it's extremely important to go in hopeful, obviously not overconfident, but it is an investment. And you don't want to skimp on your first book, and then in the future when you make your next book, you're kind of too embarrassed to continue to market that first book, right? A lot of people forget, keep marketing all of your books. And a lot of creators also, when they don't get the sales that they're hoping for, they they kind of just let the story die, or they stop marketing the book. Now, that could be because maybe the story just wasn't up to snuff, but if you truly believe in your story and you really love it, I mean, you should never give up on it. And just because you didn't get a great reaction initially with cover art doesn't mean you can't re-release the book with new cover art, just like I did. You know, I sold, probably 100, I think I sold 130 copies of The First of Blood and Stone in a year. Not horrible by any means. And I did it on Amazon, but to me, like, it wasn't enough for me, right? I knew my story was was worth a lot more than 130 sales. Now that I've re-released it through Indiegogo Fund My Comic, I mean, I've sold over double that. I'm nearing triple that already in just like 5 months. Um, and I'm not on a big site, right? They cost a little bit more than they would on Amazon because I'm working with all small businesses. I'm doing all the packaging myself. I'm procuring all the materials, right? I don't have that buying power, that these larger companies do, like Amazon. But if I would have just given up, I mean, man, I would be regretting that right now. I mean, this has become a profitable venture for me, and it's really, really taken off, at least from a novel standpoint, right? So, if you really, really want your story to get in the hands of others, and that cover art's not sitting well with you, it's probably a sign you may need to go back to the drawing board, find maybe a new artist, and just take your time the second go around, vet a bunch of artists, just look kind of outside of the norm, at least for novelists, and really, really do it right the second time around. Or if you're a completely new creator or you're releasing a new book, do that the first go around and you'll be really happy with that. And that was just for like online sales, right? The other aspect is in person, right? If you're going to do comic book conventions or book events, farmers markets, the things I've covered in a previous Real Talk, that cover art is everything. I mean, you can use that you can use it for your banner, right? That's what's going to draw people to your table. You trying to, flag people down, that may not work real well, but if you have some awesome cover art, a nice display, that is what's going to catch people's eyes. Every event I've done, they see that art and they're just like, whoa, is that a gargoyle or is this Lovecraftian? And then that, again, it opens that door. You can have that conversation, get them excited, and then it opens up their wallet. But if that cover art didn't wow them or intrigue them, they would have just walked by. So it is extremely important, and it's the same if you have Indiegogo or Amazon. If your thumbnail doesn't catch their attention, that's it. The door is closed, right? That person's probably never going to come by your project again. So you really need to invest in that cover art. And even if you don't make your money back, again, this is all trial and error for folks. But you're better off taking that shot, investing, maybe $500 or so, and really going all out. The other thing is that's your marketing material. It's not just a book cover, right? I mean, it's thumbnails, it's banner art, it's t-shirt art, it's merch. I mean, it's how you can take, portions of it, especially if you have multiple characters, so you can do character introductions on Twitter. It is your marketing material. It's not just to cover your book. You have to make the most out of that investment. Don't just plop it on the cover and just hope people see it. It's not very likely, right? If you're not paying for ads on Amazon and whatnot, or you're not connected with booktubers, with well-known YouTubers. I had zero connections when I started this. My cover art got me in with big comic book creators. It got me on their shows. It's what's gotten me connected with at least one booktuber. I'm still struggling on the booktuber side of things. It's a bit of an enigma, but I mean, I've gotten on so many awesome comic book shows that have brought me so many backers and got me to now almost $9,000 in sales when I was a nobody. I had less than 500 followers when I had this cover art because I used this cover art for marketing material to, kind of fine tune tweets. I'm at 2,200 followers now. That is because of the cover art. It's not just because of me. It's not just because of the story. That cover art is what got people intrigued, not only in me, like, for me as an artist, right? That's what got them intrigued about me. It's what got them intrigued about the story. It's what got them to read the pitch to the story. It's what opened up a lot of doors. And there's still a lot of more doors to open, but it's that cover art that's going to open them. And then the pitch. So I really want to stress, folks, you really, really need to be patient, take your time, do a lot of research. If you've got to get some sample art or just view people's art that's out there, don't just rush it. Trust me, you will be very thankful. And even as a novelist, you can kill it at conventions with the right cover art, you know. And for indie comic book creators, that cover art is king. Again, it's the same thing. It's what pulls them into that Indiegogo page. But it's of course important to have matching interiors. That's for sure. You don't want to have a bait and switch. But again, it's that cover art that pulls people in, and then it gets them to read that pitch. It's what gets them excited. So if you truly believe you have an amazing story, you need the cover art to match it. Absolutely. Um, and yeah, I mean, I get it. You know, money is it's a tricky topic, right? Um, but when people are kind of getting tricked to think like, oh, you got to spend $2,000, $3,000, I gotta go AI. It's like we need more people like telling folks about these artists that they've worked with, that they've had great experiences with, that are affordable, right? Again, all of my artists, Joe Ball, Skunk Artworks, Corey Barton, Elliot Rodriguez, they're all very affordable and extremely talented. So I encourage everybody, reach out to them, commission them, you know. But I could also name 10, 20 other artists that are also affordable and great. Jimmy Reyes, Rob Hunter. I mean, there's guys that have worked for Marvel and DC that are affordable. They really are. So think outside the box. Don't think that, oh, just because this author used this cover artist, I have to use them. No. Think outside the box. Just be patient. And yes, if it means working an extra 8 months, just to scrounge up those couple $100, trust me, it will be worth it versus just rushing it and getting it out there. So, you've seen my cover art here that I've pulled up earlier, but I want to give some good examples of other books that I've bought because of the cover art. First one is Fear of Moncroy by Brian Asher, another indie author who you can tell he really, really put a lot of thought into this cover art. It's very detailed and it's also elegant. And he went more of a painted style, and I think it really, really fits this book. And it's done, from what I can tell, very well on Twitter. It pulls people in. It pulled me in, got me to read the pitch, and then I bought it. So, great example of someone just thoroughly thinking out their cover art, finding the right artist, and I'm sure it's paid off. Now, on the comic side, I'm going to go with an obvious one, and that's Dale Keown with Pitt. I mean, Dale is godlike when it comes to cover art, but this is just a great example of just some highly detailed art. Look at this character in the middle. Geez. But again, very well thought out. This is just something that, you see a cover like this and you're like, I gotta read that description. I gotta see what this is about. And that's what I was going for with my cover art for my mini comics. That's what drew me to Corey's artwork. It was very similar to Dale Keown in certain aspects. And I've had people, actually a inker that worked with Dale Keown on Hulk at a convention came up. I was like, man, this looks like Dale Keown art. And I was just like, hell yeah, that's exactly what I was going for. Like, that was very like awesome to hear that, right? So it's extremely crucial that you go all out on cover art. Now, speaking of cover art, I want to talk about Rob Hunter's Death Raider. I mentioned it in the last video. This is a campaign that we really need to get the funding up. This is a fantastic campaign. Just look at this cover art here. Great example. Looks phenomenal in color, but also in black and white. So, this campaign, it should be a minimum at $50,000, if not more. So right now it's sitting at 21,242. I want to do whatever I can to try to get this guy up to at least 25,000. I'm excited for this book. I have backed it. So I'm going to tell you what the story is about. So MARSOC Marine Raider Staff Sergeant Corey Moore gains enhanced intelligence and knowledge when Moore is forced to destroy alien technology in the heat of a firefight. Moore is hit by shrapnel that lodges into his brain, creating a rudimentary connection with the tech. Now random bursts of information allow Moore to build the Death Raider armor. With Moore's wits, his armor, and with the help of his cohort, Anna Toussaint, the two must go on the run. Will Moore and Anna uh, will Moore and Anna be able to fight off their alien pursuers, the Raycor Empire? It is inevitable that Moore ends up experimented on and dissected in an alien laboratory on some far-flung planet millions of light years away. Death Raider Volume 1 is a perfect bound comic with 64 pages of full color. So, yeah, fantastic sci-fi story. Reminds me of like a alien tech version of District 9 in a way, but with a hero vibe. So, highly recommend everyone go back this book. Rob's a top-notch guy. He promotes other indies. He also worked, in the big two. So, please check it out. And yeah, please also check out and back Vigilantes Creed. I'd love to hear people's feedback on the cover art. And yeah, you guys will see in the interiors and the pros and also in the interior art the mini comic of why it's so important to be patient and put a lot of detail into your work. So thank you guys for listening. I know this one was a little bit longer, but that is, I mean, I wanted to talk about how important cover art is, and it's not something you can really talk about in a quick amount of time. And honestly, I probably could have talked about it for an hour. It's that important. And I really, really want indie creators to put some thought into this and go out there and make the best books that they possibly can. And the only way you can do that is with awesome cover art. It's just like a film. I mean, look at the films behind me, right? Watchmen, Batman vs Superman, 300, right? That the covers to the DVDs, the marketing is everything, and your cover art is your marketing. So make the most of it. All right. Thank you guys. I appreciate it, and God bless.